Hi there, I'm Lelia Lewis, and welcome to another edition of New Day, New Beginnings. Now, the title of today's lesson is something that we all can relate to. I don't care who you are, where you live, what you've been doing. This is an item, a category that all of us have issues with, me included. But the title of today's lesson is Games People Play. Now, there are a lot of different games that could be in that category, but the problem is, well, first of all, who's playing the game and who's dictating the rules? And that's where the trouble begins. And I'm talking about the game of life. The game of life, because there are so many different areas in the game of life. You know, we get caught up in so much stuff, and every day is something different. And how many times you say, oh Lord, when does it ever end? It doesn't. It doesn't. Life has a lot of, it should be not, the word games shouldn't be used, because life is not a game, it's a journey. But so many people turn it into a game. And there are a lot of people we come in contact with, and sometimes on a daily basis, and in some areas more than others. So today, my area of the game of life, the categories I chose were deceit, lies, trickery, and mistreatment. Why? Because that's what we see in our everyday life, whether it's happening to us or happening to someone else. Because we always know when it's happening to someone else, because it's all over the news. There's always lies and trickery and deceit every single day, every single day. And we're going to just point out and talk about some of the things that have transpired way before our time, but are still relevant to us today. And it's all under the categories of deceit, lies, trickery, and mistreatment. So let's start in the book of Matthew, and I'm going to go to Matthew verse 12. And as Jesus was going into the synagogue, look what happened. It says, then behold, there was a man with a withered hand. And the people asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? That they might accuse him, meaning the priests and the Pharisees already knew what Jesus was capable of. They had seen him do the miracles, but they didn't want to acknowledge it. They didn't want the people to acknowledge him. More and more people were beginning to follow Jesus, to see the miracles that he could perform, how he could heal people. And they became more and more absorbed, and his crowds became thousands and thousands. They wanted to hear his words. They wanted to see him do some more healing. And the Pharisees, no, they didn't like that at all. So this is the Pharisees asking the people. Now in front of the people, the Pharisees said to Jesus, is it okay? Is it the law to heal on the Sabbath? Because back then on the Sabbath, you were to do nothing. Zero. No work, no nothing. Just kind of sit and observe or go to the synagogue, but that was it. Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And they asked him that on purpose because they were resentful of all the attention he was getting, and they wanted to accuse him of being a liar. So they figured, well, He talks in all these riddles and stuff. Let's ask him what he thinks about that. But Jesus again went with a parable. And he said to them, well, what man is there among you that shall have one of your sheep and it fall into a pit on the Sabbath? Would you not lay hold to him? Would you not lift him out? So what's he saying? He's saying, well, if you have a sheep and he falls in the pit just because it's the Sabbath, are you going to just leave him there because you're not supposed to do anything on the Sabbath? How much then is a man better than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath. So that was another parable. The example of the sheep. If you're a sheep herd and one of your sheep fall, you're just going to leave them in there because it's the Sabbath? No, you're going to put your hand in there and get them out. So if you would do it for one of your sheep, wouldn't you certainly do it for a man? So then Jesus turned to the man and he said, stretch forth your hand. And when he stretched his hand forth, it was restored just like his other hand. It became whole like his other hand. And the Pharisees, well, they couldn't say anything. They couldn't say anything. But in verse 14, it says, they went out to hold counsel against him to figure out how they might destroy him. So their whole thing was, we got to get rid of him. But see, Jesus knows everything. He knew what they were thinking. He knew what they were thinking before they probably even knew what they were thinking. And so he left. He left the synagogue. But so many people followed him because they knew, they saw what he could do, and they wanted his help. So they followed him. Now let's get over to Matthew again. Let's go to chapter, let's stay in chapter 12 and go to verse 22. And that says, they brought it. Then came the people that were following him, the crowds that were following him. They brought to Jesus, they brought him one who was possessed with the devil, one who was blind, and one who was dumb. And he healed them all. He removed this devil from the man who was possessed. The blind man could see, and the dumb man could speak. And all the people were amazed. And they said, is this the son of David? But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, oh, no, he's not. He's a fellow. He doesn't cast out the devils, only if he's from Beelzebub. Beelzebub is the prince of devils. So now the priests are saying, no, he's not the son of David. He's from Beelzebub. He's from Satan. And the prince of devils. But Jesus again knew their thoughts. So while they were trying to convince the people that, he was a fake, he was a fraud, he's only from Beelzebub, these lies to deceive the people, to get the people to believe what they were saying, that he was sent by Satan and not by God. And what happens then? Let's go to Matthew 27. 26, I'm sorry. Matthew 26, verse 16. Now, this again is total betrayal. Now, before I get to this verse here, think about it. How Jesus was responding. He never said anything back. He never even answered. He just left. And that's how you handle things that are negative in your life. He never said anything negative back. His response was always logical, always proven without words, because he didn't have to say anything, because his actions spoke for him. Actions always speak louder than words. They always have. And I've always been a great believer of that, because people will tell you whatever they think you want to hear. They won't say it to get you to like them. They will say it to get you to believe in them. They will get you to say it to be on their side against somebody else. The word of deceit can come from anybody at any time. Now, many of his responses were through parables, and one of them was this Matthew chapter 22, um, which was verse 16. Let me get, I skipped 22. Okay, let me go back. Matthew 22, verse 15. Okay, now this is when, again, the Pharisees are still working on how to trip him up. So in verse 15, he says, the Pharisees took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk, because they didn't like the parables, because the parables were very clear. So they sent unto him, and they said, tell us therefore, verse 17, what do you think about this? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar? Because back then, everybody had to pay Caesar. Everybody had to give tribute to Caesar in one way or another. Whatever possessions you had or money you had to contribute to Caesar. So they're going to trick him to see if they can get him to maybe say something that they can prove is not true. So they said to him, what do you think about this? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar? But Jesus again already recognized what was behind that. And he says he recognized their wickedness. And he said, why do you tempt me, you hypocrites? Show me the tribute money. So they brought him a penny. And he said unto them, well, who is this image and the subscription? So on the penny, whose face is on the money, on the coin, and whose signature is on the coin? And they said, it's Caesar's. Very indignantly. That's Caesar's picture and Caesar's signature. And then he said, well, then render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God. And when they heard these words, the people just marveled. But the Pharisees, they left him and went their way. He always had an answer in parables. So that's all he had to do. And the people were hearing it. They were amazed at what he said. Plus, they're the ones seeing all the miracles that he's doing. So then they thought of another way to try to trap him. Let's see if we can find the next one. Where was it? 17 and 22. Yeah, Matthew chapter 20, where am I at? 22, 17. Matthew 26. Matthew chapter 26. And now over here, they're still plotting on him, but they don't quite know what to do. But what they did was, and this to me was one of the greatest deceptions of all, because what they did was they knew Iscariot, Judas Iscariot, was one of his disciples. And many times they had approached Judas to ask him, "Where is Jesus? Can you take us to Jesus?" But he wouldn't do it. But then they had asked him many times, "Well, we just want to talk to him. We just want to talk to him." So Judas kept saying, "Well, I don't know. I don't know. Um, he's going to be safe. Nothing's going to happen to him." So based on this is when Judas went back to the priests. And look at Matthew chapter 26, verse 14. One of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests, and he said unto them, "Okay, what will you give me if I deliver him to you?" And they promised him 30 pieces of silver. And from that time on, he, meaning Judas Iscariot, was waiting for an opportunity to betray Jesus. One of the biggest betrayals of all time. Talk about deception. Jesus never would have thought, but based on, Judas thinking, "Oh, well, they're not going to harm him, and I'll have 30 pieces of silver." So let's go to that's where we're at, verse 20, chapter 27. Because what happened was, after Judas Iscariot said he would do that, he was just waiting for the opportunity. But the only loser here right then was Judas Iscariot, because his focus was so much on the 30 pieces of silver. He had no regard for the welfare of Jesus. And he was supposed to be following Jesus. He was supposed to be a follower. But that's how fast money can deceive you. Even nowadays, same thing. Same thing. And Jesus was in Gethsemane, and they had the Last Supper, and Jesus was in Gethsemane praying. And that was Judas' opportunity. And Judas went and got the priests. They brought their guards. They came to the Garden of Gethsemane, and there was Jesus. And that's how they got Jesus, because of the, I guess I'll say, betrayal. Well, it was a betrayal. The betrayal of his own disciple, Judas Iscariot. So they took him back to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now, again, here's where the elders had to counsel and sought to find false witness against him. They wanted to put him to death, but they couldn't do it legally. So they were trying to create ways to put him to death. So they had another council again, and they wanted to see if they could arrange this fake cause or reason why he needed to die. Let's go to chapter 27 right fast, just in the verse 3 to 5. Let's go there, because now that they've taken him, they've had counsel, and now they're going to put him to death for blasphemy. But see, now Judas is finding out about, well, they told me they weren't going to do anything to him. Now he's finding out that his betrayal is sending Jesus to die. And in Matthew chapter 27, verse 3 says, "Then Judas, who had betrayed Jesus, when he saw that he was condemned," now Judas is regretful. He's repenting himself and brought against the 30 pieces of silver that he received from the chief priests and the elders. And he was very distraught. And he was saying to himself, sinned. I have sinned in that I have betrayed innocent blood. And he was in the synagogue and he was praying because he needed forgiveness now for the betrayal that he had done. But the priest said to him, well, what is that to us? See that to yourself. Like that's your problem. You take care of it. And Judas cast down the pieces of silver right in the temple, and he left. And he was so distraught, he went and hanged himself. He went and hanged himself. I mean, being disloyal to people or dishonest and deceptive, it has a way of catching up with you. You may think you got away with it. He did. He thought he was home free. He had 30 pieces of silver and Jesus would be okay and he'd be rich. Doesn't work like that. Never does, never has, and never will. Dishonesty, deceit, trickery. They were tricking him and he was being deceitful and all lies. They lied, the priests and the Pharisees lied continuously to get their way. And now they finally had it. Now they finally had it. So, and even, how do I say it? Even though you may be regretful for a betrayal or deception or lies that hurt other people, sometimes you can't fix it. And Judas knew he couldn't fix it. And he knew he was responsible. And he couldn't stand that. He couldn't stand his own self because of betrayal. Think about it in your own lives. Has somebody betrayed you? Maybe, probably so. I know I've been betrayed. I'm well aware of that. But the point is how you react to it. Now, in Proverbs 26, verse 21, it says, as coals, meaning coal you put on a fire, as coals are to burning coals, or as wood is to a fire, so is a contentious man to strife. And that simply means a contentious person is somebody who's very quarrelsome. You know, they're real belligerent, and, you know, they always want to keep an argument going. And that's just saying a contentious person is just like putting wood on a fire or adding more coal to your fire because it's always stirring up. It kindles strife. And to kindle means to stir up, get it started, keep it going. And strife, of course, is any type of struggle or any fight or bitterness, anything like that. And sometimes, you know what? It's better to just not respond at all. And a lot of times I find myself doing that. I take that route a lot of times. Uh, I mean, there's no mistreatment worse than what Jesus got. Make no mistake. Being crucified is the worst treatment. That's beyond mistreatment. That's just outright cruel. But that's what they did back in those days anyway. So there was no getting around that. But the point I'm making is in our lives today, we have to learn how to just walk away. I've learned to walk away. Now, we've discussed these different scenarios. Let me ask you, how do you handle negative situations that come into your life? What do you do? Are you super sensitive? I mean, does every little thing just set you off? You know, some of these people that you, no matter what you say, they just go off on you. And then you're thinking, well, what in the world is wrong with them? Or do you respond negatively the way they were to you, like an insult with an insult, or or do you just kind of say to yourself, you know what, it didn't even worth it? And I find myself walking away a lot. Sometimes you have to consider the source. And when I say that, I mean, sometimes people have issues themselves and they take it out on you. Maybe you just caught them at a time, or maybe something happened that made them remember the negative things that were in their life. But uh many times people have their own inner issues, and you don't know what they are. We don't know what triggers people. We see it all the time. So the point is, you've got to learn how to handle your own issues, but to handle them properly, to let them go. A lot of times it's not even worth it. So just don't be too busy to do. Think first. Think before you speak, because once the words are out, there's no taking them back. No taking them back. So I hope you review this, think about it yourself, and think about games people play. Don't be deceived, don't be tricked, and don't mistreat. Until next week, I'm Lelia Lewis. Thanks for joining me.